Yeah, so hi everybody, I'm Janis Jones. I'm a teacher on special assignment in the Oceanside Unified School District here in San Diego County, and I got involved in this project through my affiliation with the San Diego Area Writing Project.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rosina Garcia. I work at Wilson Middle School in San Diego Unified, and I've been involved in CREATE when I was an undergrad at UCSD, and they can't seem to get rid of me.
And good afternoon. My name is Gina Woodard, and I am a high school teacher at Hilltop High in Chula Vista through the Sweetwater Union High School District. And I teach biology and AP Environmental Science. I'm also the club advisor for Environmental Justice and Sustainability Club. So I think we'll start off with a little Mentimeter, and anything that you put in here. First of all, if you've never used Mentimeter, the responses come up as anonymous, so we won't see your name linked with anything. So we'd love for everybody to put their responses in their responses. But how do you interact with the ocean? What is your experience? What's your involvement, whether you have little kids and you take them to the beach or some other interaction? And we're going to put those in the Mentimeter, and I am going to present these here. Now, let me see here. For some reason, the responses aren't coming up.
I think if you press S to hide the image, maybe that would work.
Yeah, usually it's
there it goes.
S, but it's not. Okay, there we go. It was going. Okay, with your camera. Okay, photography. Center, nice. You get centered. Kids at the beach, snorkeling, scuba. Nice. Love to take walks on the beach, tide pooling. All right, nice. I always feel like it would be nice to connect with other teachers that are doing things at the beach. Like swimming in it. Yeah, also we should say okay. Ocean tips for identity. Nice. All right, so I'm going to go back to the slideshow here. And if you have any other responses, you can go ahead and put those in. I'm going to return over here. And so here's our agenda. We're going to go through a little bit on what the three of us have a collection of lessons that we've put together. We're going to focus a little bit on Indigenous perspectives and solutions. And Janis will go ahead and begin, and we'll have questions.
And I do just want to emphasize before Janis goes that these 3 units, sea level rise, extreme weather events, and marine ecosystem impacts, they can stand alone. They can be used together in any order. So that's how they were designed, and they all do adhere to the next generation science standards.
Okay, let's I think we'll go for real quickly one more Menti response.
We're just
here.
Curious what your experience is teaching climate change, and perhaps if you discussed any specific phenomena with your students. We're just curious what your experience is.
Yeah, or if you have a particular lesson that you use, if you do lessons on ocean acidification, or if you do anything that involves any type of like real world phenomena, things like that. Let's see. Oops. Keeps on. Let's see. Is everybody able to put responses? For some reason, I use this all the time at school. I never have a glitch with this like this. Q and S, and it's still. I'm not seeing any responses.
I just want to say that Stacy
go.
already in the chat had added that she teaches interdisciplinary coastal themes, sea level rise, sand mining, overdevelopment of the coast. And Stacy, if you're not able to, oh, looks like the Mentimeter is starting to populate. I was going to say, we'd love to know what resources you use to teach those.
I forgot to click
topics.
next question. I think so. I think that's one of the things. So I think my response, my second response also went on the first slide, but I'll type it again.
Okay, you know what? And I'm so used to doing these with like 2 slides with my students. And I just figured as soon as I advanced that would advance everybody, but I forgot sometimes. Yeah. So, rise, okay. Right, anyone else? Okay, yeah, plastic pollution, microplastic surveys, MPAs, sea level. Value of a whale. I do recall that resource, and I haven't. That's right. I remember that's been a few years. All right. Oh, extractive practices. Okay, so I'll let people kind of have some time to continue populating that one. And why don't we go ahead and we'll move on to Janis here. Oh, and just real quickly, you'll see the NGSS alignment. We're not going to focus too much on that for the lessons. And Janis is going to begin with ocean warming.
Hi, everyone. So we were signed up to do the topic of ocean warming. And as we started talking about the topic, we realized it was really huge. And so then we kind of broke off into the 3 different groups, and hear a little bit from each of us on the lessons that we discussed. Before we jump into this, though, there is another Mentimeter. If we could try it with the question of the cause of sea level rise.
And this is a quick poll.
Yeah, there are four choices there. Take a quick poll. We'll see if we can see the results. I can't see what order they come in. Could you read that, Gina? Can you see it?
So we just have one so far. We have one person, 1 melting of sea ice, 1 thermal expansion of seawater.
Okay, give everyone a chance to get in there and enter their responses, and then we'll get back to that topic in a little bit.
Yeah, I'll leave that up so everybody can contribute there.
Okay. So the sea level rise unit, during this unit, they'll learn about the cause of the sea level rise. Back a slide.
Oh, sorry.
The students learn about the causes of sea level rise. They'll analyze short and long-term trends. They'll learn how low-lying, especially indigenous communities, are impacted, and they'll explore adaptation strategies. And then as a culminating activity, they'll do some argument research and writing to address the topic, which will deepen their understanding. And then next slide. Most of the lessons are curated from NASA and from the National Writing Project, and they're grouped into 3 categories. There are 3 science-based lessons that are, one's a demo and 2 others are activities. There are 2 math lessons that are data focused, where they're analyzing data through graphs, and then the English language arts lessons are based on research and argument writing. And so these lessons could all be taught in one content area, such as science. However, if you had a team of teachers that wanted to work together, that they could be taught across the curriculum in each of those subject areas separately, but with the combined focus together. So what, yep, next slide. So this is the first demo. This is from NASA, and the lesson is about why the oceans are warming. And so imagine a balloon filled with air and a balloon filled with water and a heat source such as a lighter. And you can unmute if anybody wants to make prediction or knows what's going to happen. You can go ahead and unmute and tell us. A balloon filled with air versus a balloon filled with water. Anyone have a prediction? No? Okay, so we're going to watch a short video clip to see what happens. Oh, no audio.
You know what? I think
I thought I vaguely heard something.
I know how to do this
I
on
thought
my
I heard
Zoom.
something. Is there any way to turn it up? Like at the lower left hand?
I don't know. I mean, only on mine. I think on the embedded video.
That's okay. We can, so we already saw what happened with the balloon filled with air, right? And then continue playing it, Gina, even though, and we'll just stop it a little bit early.
Okay.
So the balloon filled with air popped immediately. And now they're going to try it again with a balloon filled with water to demonstrate the ocean. So it's the atmosphere, the air versus the ocean. I'm sorry, there's no audio. What you'll see is that the balloon filled with water does not pop immediately. In fact, for as long as he's holding the lighter to the balloon, it doesn't pop because the water within the balloon is absorbing that heat. So this introductory demonstration is to show why this is an important issue, that the ocean is actually absorbing, I think it is about 90% of trapped heat. Okay, so that's a demo. You could do that in person with students, actually doing it with them live, or if you have luck with your technology, you can play the video for them and hopefully they'd be able to hear the sound. And of course, if you're doing it live, you'd want to take precautionary measures. The video goes through, it's about a 3-minute video, and it talks you through how you would do the demo and then gives explanations about what's happening. And throughout the lessons in the sea level rise unit, there are lots of embedded videos that are really, really interesting. So then the 2 lab activities, oops, go back. There's 2 lab activities. One is called What's Causing Sea Level Rise, land ice versus sea ice. And in that, they'll make a model that shows how melting ice from land ice affects sea level rise versus sea ice. And then the second lab is on thermal expansion. And in that, students will build a model to show how the heating of the water and thermal expansion impacts sea level rise, which leads us back to the Mentimeter question. And I didn't get to see all the answers, but that's fine. We can go to the next slide. Oh, and I can't see, it's so tiny on my screen. I can't see what the choices are there, Gina.
So far the leading is thermal expansion of seawater. We have votes for all, but thermal expansion of seawater is the number 1.
Okay, great. So then let's go back to the next slide. And then, so thermal expansion of seawater is is a great contributor to sea level rise. However, I think what most people think about when they think about sea level rise is the melting ice, and that the thermal expansion is not as commonly known, although it has been research states that it's about half of the rise over the last 25 years is due to thermal expansion, and that figure is expected to rise as the oceans continue to warm. A tiny contributor to sea level rise, and I don't quite understand it, I'm not a scientist, I'm an English teacher background, is that the groundwater pumping and or water storage, dams, and those kind of land-based activities also affect sea levels. And then finally, melting sea ice doesn't contribute to sea level rise at all, but that's a misconception that some people do have. Okay, so next slide. I laid out the lessons in that the demo and the lab activities would be done first, but Rosina, one of the partner teachers in this project, she taught the lessons to her students, and after teaching them, she thought that the data pieces might be better taught at the beginning. That would be totally up to the teacher. As Rosina also said, any of these lessons could be taught in any order. So in the two data lessons, in the one lesson, they look at two graphs and compare and contrast those two graphs. And then in the second data lesson, they analyze short versus long-term trends of sea level rise. Okay, next slide. So after students understand the causes and the trends, they'll start to gather information from a variety of sources that address the impacts to low-lying communities, and with the focus on Indigenous people. And then they'll also read articles, watch videos, analyze infographics to understand possible adaptation strategies. And linked in the lessons and on the slides here are lots of resources that you could provide to your students with titles such as the ocean encroaches, this Washington state tribe is building its next chapter, climate change is making this Alaskan town fall into the ocean, and Native community in Louisiana relocates as land washes away. Really interesting pieces to read, even for anyone to understand what's happening to these communities. So after they complete their reading and their research, students will develop claims, gather evidence, and they'll write and edit an argument piece, thinking of purpose and audience. An audience could be newspaper policymaker, school leader, business person, etc. Okay, next slide. So I'll conclude my segment by sharing a part of an essay that a student of Rosina's wrote, I think a sixth grader. And he lives in Del Mar, and Del Mar is a community that has had some conversation about, I just lost the word, when you have a planned retreat from the coastline. So he says, I love San Diego and I would not want to live anywhere else if given the choice. But something that's becoming more and more prevalent is the ever rising sea levels. It has already impacted numerous smaller communities and islands. I feel that Del Mar is the next heavily impacted community. One great example of who's been impacted the most by this tragedy is the Isle des Jean-Charles, south of Louisiana. But first, I feel it's necessary to tell you how sea levels rise in the first place. And he goes, oh, Rosina's correcting me. He was just pretending to live in Del Mar. I was wondering about that because I knew you didn't teach in Del Mar, Rosina. So he goes on to tell some of the history of the isle and shares that it was once a refuge for Indian American tribes who were escaping the Indian Removal Act. And he goes on to conclude 60 years later, the island is now 1/4 as wide as it was and nearly half as long. The population is down to nothing. A mere 26 families still struggle to live here. It is not fair how this manages to happen to someone who has no power or control over a situation like this. Although I'm aware that we are close to building a home on Mars and the moon, I think it is important that we respect our origins, as we are nothing without them. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Rosina, who will share extreme weather lessons.
And we just did FYI, we only have about 15 more minutes left.
Oh, okay.
So I did my unit on extreme weather events. So there are 4 lessons. The first 3 lessons should take about a class period. And in the first one, students are just going to explore the relationship between sea surface temperature and hurricane strength. So they use a simulation to understand that relationship. They can play around with the pressure, the time of the year, and the sea surface temperature to see how that could affect the strength of a hurricane. In the second lesson, students will further analyze sea surface temperature maps and learn how scientists gather this type of data, because historically it was observational data. We did not have the technology that we have today. So they will also learn about how we can get this data. How do we even get maps like this so that we can understand these types of relationships? And students will also make predictions for which areas are most likely to experience an extreme weather event. In the third lesson, students will be writing a claim evidence reasoning paragraph using evidence such as this to explain how ocean warming could affect the formation of storms. And in the last lesson, students will go through the human-centered design process, which is very similar to the engineering design process. There is a focus on empathy and truly understanding a person or a group of people and their needs, and designing a solution that will specifically help them. And so they'll design a solution that mitigates a negative effect of hurricanes or some other extreme weather event of their choice. And in this set of lessons, students will also learn about Indigenous people's relationship with the ocean and will incorporate that knowledge into their solution.
Oh, did you want to share anything else?
No, that's it. I put a link in the chat to the hurricane simulation they will use in the first lesson. But if anyone has any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat.
Yeah, and then I'll just go through mine quickly. We might skip the Mentimeters. We're kind of running short on time. So my lessons focused on marine ecosystem impacts and solutions to the warming crisis. So one of the things that we really wanted to explore with this unit is the fact that many people didn't realize the impacts that of climate change, because a lot of them were occurring in the ocean, and because few people interact with the ocean, or the awareness really wasn't there. So my first lesson was on, and I linked some resources. I just kind of want to go over, for the sake of time, just some of the things that I produced that might be helpful. But there's a simulation that's on Albedo. I did a little Jamboard, a KWL. Here I have some links to an article that the students will read as the oceans begin to warm, the world's kelp forests begin to disappear. And so that's one of the resources for lesson 1. Lesson 2, we're focusing on a little bit on computational skills, and the students are doing a lab. And some of you guys have seen the fish temperature lab. We're doing a jigsaw activity. So I have a Padlet that you're welcome to use. I have links to the articles that, if you've ever heard of EnviroBytes, some of these are EnviroBytes articles. And so the students are going to do a post regarding the article. And so they're going to kind of jigsaw that out. And then third, we're doing a little bit more with data for the third lesson. And so in some of these, some of the ArcGIS, some of them you just have to register, but they're usually very quick to respond to give you access to the data sets. There are some aerial kelp surveys. Cheryl Peach, who's here from Scripps Institution of Oceanography, she gave access, or she assisted me a little bit with some of the data for some of these lessons. And some of them, it's just a matter of kind of like if one teacher was commenting that one of the sites was blocked, it just needs to, there's a request form and then you can access the data. There's also a coral bleaching interactive activity that is that's an interesting activity for students that kind of guides them through it, like a click and learn. And the ArcGIS data, there's a few good data sets from there too. So let me see, let me go to the last one is our solutions. And so if you've ever heard of this, there's a whole climate simulator that can be used with adults or students, and it's called En-ROADS. I went to the training and it was a fantastic training. And this is something where the students can kind of represent, I'm not going to show the video clip for the sake of time here, but they can make choices. They have a simulation. I made a document to go along with it. And the climate simulator, they make different changes that affect the climate. They could also represent different countries kind of in like a United Nations kind of simulation kind of thing. So they could change electrification and non-renewables and things like that. So they can kind of modify things and see the result of their actions. And then the last activity that I have is a PSA project that the students can do. They can do a Google slideshow. They can use Canva or Pictochart, Satori, and I have a rubric in here for that as well. So, and a few samples. There's some of these, the students took some of their data from that En-ROADS. But if you're interested at all in the En-ROADS, it's really a very cool tool. You can do it with Socratic Seminar. You can, and it's a good collaborative tool. So feel free to reach out if that's something you're interested in. So I think we'll move on to questions, and I'm going to put the link to this in the. Oops, sorry. Let me put the link real quickly in the chat. Yeah, let me just
Gina, don't worry about that. I made a copy of the presentation.
Okay.
And I'll share the copy with them.
Okay. Perfect. So yeah, we have about 8 more minutes. So I wanted to kind of get through any questions that we have. Let me go to, sorry, too many things open now. Let me go back over here. Okay, maybe this one right here. If you're interested in going back to the Mentimeter, how do you see yourself using these lessons with your students? Do you have any recommendations? We're available if you are confused about something or you want to know how to apply something. Like Janis and Rosina mentioned that our lessons don't have to be canned altogether. They can be, you can use bits and pieces. But if you have any recommendations, we'd love to hear.
And if you have any questions for us now, I know this was really hurried. We had less time than we thought to get through the presentation, but if you have any questions for us now, just unmute and ask away. Or anything to share that you've done. I know Stacy had mentioned teaching sea level rise. I'd love to know what you used for that, since that was the area that I focused on.
Yeah, well, I actually had to, well, there are a couple different things I look at, and one is this book by David Helvarg, and I can put a link in the chat, but it really looks at the California coast through all the different ways in which the coast is impacts us, and like and really even the history of the coast. Like in San Diego, I went to school in San Diego, like, you know, the powerful, like the military history, right, that kind of helped shape the coast and in some ways helped preserve a lot of areas. And then just looking at, I collaborate with my husband as a scientist, and his program is environmental science and resource management. And so I collaborate with them on projects in terms of like communicating on sea level rise. So this is with college students, but although I would say that they have everything that is in here would be new information to them as well. But really looking more like through the lens of how do we engage, like sort of help people understand why the coast matters to them, and why the coast matters to us, and then, you know, communicating then, okay, well, so if we look a lot like at things like, and this is like research that I can put other resources. We have a thing, I'll put a link in here called Beaches on the Edge, where we did research on this. But really thinking about, you know, when we, a lot of the practices we have even to shore up the beaches are really detrimental to saving the beaches. And so helping them understand the long-term consequences of that. Del Mar is a great example of that we look at a lot. So really looking at case studies up and down the coast, and then students doing research on their own as well. And we look a lot at the Coastal Commission as well. And yeah, I'll put a couple things in the chat here.
One of the things that for time, I didn't know if we'd have time to address it, but I think it's really important that we understand like the perspective that some of our families have as far as their interaction with the ocean, because I mean, when we go down, like if I go down to even Imperial Beach or different places, a lot of our students their families are fishing off the piers. They're getting, so when we're thinking about like ocean protection and water quality and all this stuff that doesn't necessarily have to do with climate change, but the students, families, a lot of the families do depend on getting dinner from the sea and they're not going to fish markets like many of us are doing and buying, you know, fish from the store. There are quite a few of them that are fishing, so they have that connection.
I want to add to that as well that I'm a surf rider volunteer, and one of our committees is beach preservation and ensuring that everyone has access to beaches. And when hardening, when people put up seawalls and different things, it increases the loss of the coastline from people who don't have access otherwise. So that's also a justice issue. In these lessons that we curated, we were focusing on bringing in Indigenous perspectives and how people on frontline communities in different places are impacted by climate change. And so that's built into all of the lessons.
I don't know if any, are there
one of the
questions?
things I was gonna say, like when the beaches were closed last spring and summer, that was something that we spent a lot of time on. So I put in an opinion piece that I helped write up, and then they only would take 3 authors. So other people, so my husband's name is in there, and then 2 other people that we collaborate with. But we tried to look at that, you know, people were so desperate, right? Like, you're not letting us go to the beach. We want to go to the beach. And so using that as a place to say, okay, now what would it do you if this beach disappeared, through other things that are really much more, you know, likely to have a long-term impact as opposed to a temporary closure related to COVID-19 restrictions. So it was an interesting, we called it Beachless, is like kind of like the hashtag for that.
Can I rub it?
Thanks for sharing these resources with us, Stacy.
And then I have Sean here. He's I'll put his email in the chat too, because he's a great resource. I'm volunteering you, Sean, sorry.
Cheryl or anyone else from the Climate Champions team have anything you want to add on this topic before we close out?
No, I just thank you guys for all the great work
Cheryl's
you did. It's just such an important topic that I think it's overlooked. You know, people think about terrestrial impacts of climate change because that's where they live. And the ocean is so important, and ocean warming is something that I think really needs some attention. So thank you guys. It's really enjoyable to work with you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today. Hopefully you got something out of it.